Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 15, the Billy Vunipola episode. Stay with us to the end to hear the pod doc's thoughts on Billy's recent injury announcement and what it all really means. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019.
Right, guys, welcome to our latest player profile. Because of what's obviously been going on, the big news this week for the Lions, for England, is the sort of terrible news actually that Billy Vunipola is not able to make the Lions tour due to a shoulder injury. So today we decided we'd actually do our player profile on Billy Vunipola, and it's going to be a slightly different one, as we are also able to welcome with us the pod doc. So we've been lucky enough to secure an interview with a doctor who has worked alongside some of the Super 15 franchises in Australia, and at the end we will get his sort of thoughts and views on Billy's injury. Just want to say, guys, thanks very much for listening. Before we sort of crack on with Billy, please do keep downloading us and, more importantly, rating us on iTunes. It is really important for us to help get our pod noticed more and more. So before we crack on, as always, it's myself with Andy. Andy, how are you?
Hey mate, yeah, not too bad. Enjoying this weather we've been having. It's pretty amazing for May. About 30 degrees the other day. I was out in the garden doing a bit of gardening, working, obviously.
Good. It's lovely, isn't it? It's really nice. Long may it continue, especially with sort of the early starts for the Lions. It'll be nice if those early starts can be nice and sunny mornings, to be honest.
Exactly.
So today it's quite a good one with Billy. Actually, there's some pretty interesting facts. I mean, him and his family have had quite an interesting route to where they've got to now. But actually, one thing I wanted to do before carried on is make an apology. When we did Anthony Watson, I made reference to Israel Dag, and I made reference to him as an Australia player, whereas obviously he's a Kiwi. So my apologies to everyone there, and thanks very much actually for sort of pointing that out to me. I completely missed it, but obviously he is an All Black, so thank you and apologies. That's apologies to everyone except for a few of the Chess Valley Rugby Club members who not only decided to point out that I was wrong, but also took the opportunity to point out what, in fairly graphic and animated detail, what they had allegedly been up to with my girlfriend. So you lot can piss off, but the rest of you, thanks very much. Right, so Billy Vunipola, full name, Villami, so Billy is actually a nickname. He was born on the 3rd of November 1992, which makes him 24 years old, and he was born in Sydney in Australia. His parents, his father is Theo. I don't know if that's the right pronunciation, but I'm going to stick with that for now.
It's with an F, isn't it? It's Fiaro, or I don't know how you pronounce the. The islanders have those sort of, it's with the it's got like a little inverted comma, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's FEAO. So I'm not sure.
Or something.
FEAO. Yeah, that probably makes more sense. Actually, I'm sure I'm butchering it somehow.
Apologies, Billy and Maka,
and Mr. Vunipola.
And Mr. Vunipola, exactly.
Yeah. And his mother is Lesinga, known as Singer, and it's actually Reverend Lesinga Vunipola. His siblings, obviously, we're all aware of Mako, his older brother, who's fellow Saracens, England, and unlike Billy, a Lion as well.
Two-time. This will be his second Lions tour.
Soon to be a two-time Lions tourist, yeah, because obviously he was there in 2013. And they also both have two sisters, Anna and Tiffany. And I think it's fairly well publicised as well. But they are also, one of their cousins is Talupe Faletau, who's the Welsh number 8 and looks likely to be Billy's Lions sort of, I say Billy's Lions replacement. He's on the Lions by his own right anyway. But I think if we had Billy locked on for the number 8 spot, looks like Faletau maybe taking that off him.
Yeah, he's certainly in with the shout, although there's definitely talk about moving things around a bit, isn't there? Because when you've got the likes of Stander and Amani and Moriarty and, Warburton and Tipperick and, now Haskell and whoever else, the back row, there's an awful lot, isn't there, in the back row? So Faletau's the only official out-and-out 8, but it'll be interesting to see whether they go down that route or whether they mix it up a bit now that Billy's thrown presumably a bit of a spanner in the works.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the reason for me, I think it might be Faletau, is because you lose so much ball carrying with the loss of Billy and that go forward. And I think Faletau's probably the strongest ball carrier of the rest, or the most natural ball carrier from the rest of them. Billy, you can't replace Billy, but I mean, in my mind, Faletau's probably your next best thing.
Yeah, he's certainly the most obvious replacement, isn't he?
Yeah, I would have thought so. And I mean, one of the reasons that Billy, such a strong ball carrier, might be due to his size of 6'2", and I've heard multiple different quotes for this, but the one I'm sticking with is 19 stone and 12 pounds, and that's having already lost over the last couple of years well over 3 stone.
Jesus.
It's a big lad, isn't he? But they've always been big, like Mako's big as well. So what I read here, Mako, when he was born, was a 12-pound baby, and Billy was slightly less in weight, but apparently longer limbed. So,
well, respect to the Rev.
I don't know what to say there apart from, ouch, really. But, they've been big lads all the way. And we'll actually put a picture on the website where you can see sort of Billy, I believe it's under 11s standing next to a teammate, and it looks like a grown man and a kid, to be honest. So Billy and Mako are 4th generation of Vunipola family to play rugby at international level. So his father, who mentioned, Viao, was a Tongan international, actually captain of Tonga. His grandfather, Sione, also a Tonga international, and his great-grandfather, also called Vilami, was also a Tonga international. So rugby definitely runs in the blood for that family.
Yeah, well, you can tell. They're both pretty key parts of the England setup, aren't they? And long may that continue.
Yeah, they're massive, aren't they? I mean, their contribution to English rugby at the moment is so huge, and to Saracens as well. And we want them to stay playing as long as possible. It could have been very different. Because when they moved over here, both Billy and Mako they lived in Wales initially, because their father had a contract with Pontypool. And so in theory, both of them could have played for 4 different sides. So Billy obviously, who we're focusing on, so he could have played for Tonga, obviously his heritage. Could have played for Australia, his place of birth. Could have played for Wales or England. And luckily for us, he chose England.
And rightly so. I think they have both spent more of their life in England than anywhere else, haven't they?
Yeah, completely. And actually, when I was reading that, so like an interview with his mum, and with his mum and dad, and they said it was never, like, even when they were in Tonga, all they talked about was wanting to play for England.
Yeah, it's not like these guys who come over, get their, it's changing obviously, but do their 3 years, get their residency, and therefore get to play international rugby where perhaps they weren't able to play at home. Obviously, that's not the case with these guys, but it's not that sort of a scenario, is it? These are guys who have been here for years.
Yeah,
this is. I'm sure. I mean, I haven't spoken to them to ask, but I'm sure that they feel that England is their home, and it's where they're from, and they are English through and through. And when you hear them speak, they couldn't be more English.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they love, like, even when they were young, like as the good Reverend says, I mean, to them, England is the land of milk and honey. And they've always sort of considered themselves, certainly the boys and their sisters have always considered themselves English. So there was, of course, as you'd expect from a sort of Welsh rugby fan is a claim that apparently when Billy was young, he claimed that he would never play for England as he wanted to play for Wales. But this is one guy's voice with absolutely no one else backing this up. So I'm taking that with a real pinch of salt, to be honest. And like you say, you know, her parents have said they only ever wanted to play for England. So I'm taking that to be the truth. So he initially, when he was in England, he attended Castle School, which is in Bristol, where he also played his early rugby for Thornbury Rugby Club in Bristol, which is the one and only time he actually got red carded, playing for Thornbury Rugby Club. He then went on to Harrow as a bursary. What was quite interesting here is his brother Mako was actually at Millfield, obviously well known for its sport. And Billy actually wanted to go to Millfield as well, but the parents wanted him to move out of sort of Mako's shadow. So they sort of wanted him to go to Harrow. And Harrow, obviously, a great school. And, you know, it was really sort of good for his rugby career. The Harrow coach, actually, the Harrow sort of director of rugby, Jesse Coulson, also was, there was an interview with him, and he was just saying sort of how much more of a player Billy was. So Billy used to take their conversions.
Wow.
So he's a really good kicker.
So in the event that England find themselves, or Saracens for that matter, in a situation like Premiership final, and they do end up going to Pennos, he might well be on the list of call-ups. He
it sounds like he was good. So when I say that Harry took their conversion, I don't know if this was every time, but one of the quotes was saying at a tournament, a sevens tournament, he would just slotted every kick. Like Billy was the kicker that day, and every kick, and most of them were out wide, but apparently didn't miss one. So yeah, you're right. It seems like he's got quite a talent with the boot.
Good
but
to
not
know.
just that. Yeah, exactly. Kicking from hand, and apparently in his time he's got a few drop goals as well.
Yeah, bit of a who was the Kiwi that used to do that all the time?
Zinzan
Brooke loved a little drop goal off the back of the scrum.
God, he did that to us in this semi-final of the World Cup, wasn't it? In '95, I think it might have been.
Naughty.
And yeah, it was. It was just like, oh God, you got the number 8 slotting drop goals. We're in pretty big trouble here. But yeah, no, and currently Billy now is actually also as well, he's studying at the University of Hertfordshire. He's studying for a degree in business and sport management. And his motivation for that, he says, I mean, obviously this can change, but once he finishes his rugby career, he'd like to use that degree and that knowledge to help players back in Tonga.
Nice. I like that about rugby. I like rugby players. They're a bit more, I mean, I guess if you're going to earn, you know, the kind of money that footballers earn, maybe you don't need to be quite so, you don't need to think quite so far ahead. But the rugby players all seem to be a bit more kind of switched on in terms of planning for the future, and you know, appreciating that they're very fortunate while they're playing, but the careers are short, and you know, they need to continue to support themselves and their families and things later on. I think Jamie Roberts is another one who's just gone back to uni, gone to do his PhD or his doctorate or master's.
Well, is he not already a doctor as well?
I think he is, but maybe he's doing another one. Who knows? The guy's clearly. We're not here to talk about Jamie Roberts because he's Welsh.
Yeah, definitely not.
But yeah, he is by all accounts heading back for more education. So fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. And I must imagine, like from Billy's perspective, it's got to be fairly time consuming. Because obviously you're sort of training every day, and then you know driving off to uni to attend lectures. It must be it must be fairly taxing on the time. With obviously on top of that, you've got the international duty as well. So I'm sure the University of Hertfordshire have allowed him flexibility on his studies to make sure that he can work around the rugby.
Yeah, as long as he occasionally plays for them.
Yeah, can you imagine him running out for
the varsity match, wasn't it?
Uni, yeah. Can you imagine that one day on like the uni rugby match, you walk out, you're like, that guy looks really familiar. You're like,
just like Billy Vunipola.
Yeah.
Smash.
I think I'd walk off the pitch, yeah. Okay, so Billy, when he was at Harrow, so he was at Harrow, and from that he joined the Wasps Academy, which is where obviously he'd been noticed. But I mean, by all accounts, he was just tearing up the scene anyway. So there was no real surprise. He joined the Wasps Academy and then made his senior debut for them in the 2011-2012 season. And between 2011 to 2013, he built up 39 appearances for Wasps and 4 tries. He then, obviously in 2013, joined Saracens, allegedly reluctantly. So the reason for joining Saracens is, as much as anything, he didn't want to play against his brother. They played against each other one match, and apparently it was really hard on the family. Their mother was quite upset by it, and she was worried it might tear the family apart.
Wow.
So that is allegedly the reason for him joining Saracens. But since then, he has, said it was the right move for him to join Saracens, which I guess makes sense.
I mean,
yeah. A couple of European Cups, a couple of Premierships.
Exactly. Although sticking with Wasps wouldn't have been the end of the world, would it? They're clearly not doing too badly either.
No, well, exactly. Yeah, I felt a bit sorry for them actually, but yeah, I mean, playing for top clubs, but I think Billy now has sort of settled and quite enjoys his life at Saracens and doesn't regret it. But at the time, he did say that, he was quite upset to leave Wasps. He really did like playing for them, and I'm sure there's a few Wasps fans out there like, damn it, why can't we have kept hold of that guy?
Yeah. It may not be true at all, but the impression that I get is that he has quite a good relationship with James Haskell, and presumably that was, as well as in the England camp, that was presumably cemented very much at Wasps. So
I would have thought so. Yeah, I'm trying to remember when. I mean, they must have overlapped. I'm trying to remember when Haskell went back to Wasps from his sort of travels and trips away. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they would have overlapped.
Yeah.
At that time, but. Yeah, so since 2013, when he's joined Saracens, he has 77 appearances and 16 tries, which is pretty good return, actually. But, he's a sort of massive ball carrier and, hugely valuable to them. And actually in 2016, so exact details are vague, but he did sign a contract extension, which was just quoted as a multi-year contract extension. So we'll read into that what we will. But, I'm sure Saracens would have, would probably sign him up to 2050 if they could, just to make sure he doesn't leave if possible. So from an international perspective, he was, so at school there was, and I saw sort of quotes of this, apparently he just used to just basically walk through every team and would actually wait at the try line till one of his teammates came to give them the ball so they were allowed to score tries as well.
I did that once and got in trouble for it.
Did you?
Yeah.
What? The cockiness of it?
Yeah. The coach afterwards just said, if you want to do that against a team that we haven't beaten in 10 years, that's fine, but don't do it against the team that we've just beaten 80-0.
Oh, well, you should probably not stop playing under 8 level and start playing men's rugby.
The prop had never scored. I'd scored a few that day. I thought, share the love.
Let him have a touchdown. But yeah, I mean, so from school, Billy obviously sort of just tearing up these teams. Someone's noticed, say he played England at under 18 level. He also played England at under 20 level as well, as most of these lads would. I mean, these days it's rare not to have played junior England by the time you get into the full squad. And he was, so initially Billy was in the Saxon squad in January 2013, played sort of a few matches for the Saxons. Then his full debut was actually on the tour to Argentina in 2013, which was when obviously the Lions were going ahead. So England were touring Argentina, and that's when Billy got his full debut when he came on in that match and actually scored a try in England's 32-3 win. So he had a really good tour. There was a tour match versus a Consor 15, which is actually an uncapped match, but he got a hat trick in 6 minutes.
Jeez.
Which is pretty quick going.
I would suggest the organisers probably got that one wrong.
Yeah, I think they'd, because for Consor 15, from what I understand, is basically a South America 15.
Right. I guess when Argentina are the peak of South American rugby, you don't really want to be diluting it with people from teams that are presumably a long way down the world rankings list.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd imagine the Argentina players probably weren't playing because they had a test coming up anyway. So it probably wasn't the strongest outfit that England have ever come against. But
I wonder if there are any games like that this time round. Because obviously we know about the 2 test matches, but I haven't seen anything about any kind of midweek games. Do you know if there's anything?
I thought there was one. I don't know who it's against. I thought there was one midweek, but I don't quote me on that.
I hope so, because obviously we're taking so many youngsters, and they're not all going to get to play Test match rugby. So it'll be, although they don't get the cap, it will definitely be good to make sure that everyone that he's taking gets a run out.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Because like you say, there's quite a few people going, and the reality is some of them aren't going to get a test cap.
Is there an echo in here, mate?
Yeah, I'm just reiterating your point, man.
Okay,
I'm just trying to articulate it a bit better. We want our listeners to understand what's happening.
Fair enough. Let us know if that helped.
I will. But so yeah, going back to Billy today, I actually thought he had more, but he's got 34 test caps and 6 tries for England. But look, there's going to be loads more of them, isn't there? I in my head, and I think, actually, I don't think many people would argue this. He is the best number 8 in the world currently.
I agree.
Arguably the best player in the world on the form he's been in recently. But I think from a number 8 perspective, he's so valuable, and I really think the Lions will miss him. He's for one player, and a few people have argued this, saying perhaps it's Owen Farrell, but I think he's for one player that most people didn't want to lose. Just his sort of, that go forward ability, even when it's a bit stagnated in the game, you're not running at pace. Billy will just move it forward, just because of his strength and ball carrying, and I think the Lions will really miss that.
Oh, even James Haskell's parents didn't want to lose Billy.
I don't get the reference there. Oh, because obviously Haskell's replaced him. Yeah, they're booing their own son just because they wanted Billy to be playing.
Exactly.
But it's a shame. What happened, and look, you gotta focus on sort of what's important, and if he's going out there just to end up doing himself a lot more damage, because I know Warren Gatlin said he tried to convince him, but if it's just going to cause long-term damage, then he's just not worth the risk, is it?
Absolutely not. No, you got to get yourself fit, and Lions is important, no doubt. If he is young, he'll have other opportunities to go on Lions tours. More importantly, he needs to be fit and strong and healthy and all the rest of it, so that he's at his peak in 2019, of course. Well,
exactly. And, there's things sort of outside rugby. He's definitely a sort of, big family man, and you don't necessarily want to be going, going off the rest of your life, not being able to move around because you've completely smashed in your shoulders or whatever. Big family man, I say that, although, because I've read here, so their sister goes to Millfield School, and I've read that Mako actually pays those fees for her because they're very into their family. I didn't hear anything about Billy doing it, so Billy maybe loosen those purse strings a bit.
Get your wallet out, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, come on, you're not shy, but I maybe doing him a misservice. Maybe he does help out, but from what I read, it's just Mako who's covering that at the moment.
If he gets in touch with the pod, we'll apologise.
Yeah, exactly, Billy. If you want to correct us there, please feel free. So yeah, the guys. I mean, it's a really interesting journey of their lives. I mean, so obviously Billy was born in Oz. Mako was actually born in New Zealand. So when we said they could have played for one of 4, Mako's the same, except instead of Australia, he could have been an All Black. But yeah, they were born in Oz, and then at the time they were living in Australia there, obviously. Then they went back to Tonga. And it was basically his grandfather who sort of said, look, you got to move to England. That's how your life sort of looks good. And then they were able to sort of move over from his father, who was obviously Tonga captain, got a contract playing in Wales. So they initially moved to Wales. They soon got used to it, and they very much built their life around the church and the rugby club. I know both their mother and father are very religious. I think I get the impression that the family are as well, but I haven't necessarily sort of seen them, make huge religious sort of marks or gestures. But I think they are quite a religious family, and I think religion and rugby are what the family's all about. And then, like you say, obviously they moved to Wales and sort of went over to Bristol and been there ever since. So they moved over here to the UK in January 99, I believe it was. And so, been here 18 years now. So how old would the boys have been? They would have been, if they're 24, so they would have been, I don't know, 6 or something.
Yeah. So there was a lot of moving around in a short space of time in the early years, wasn't there?
Yeah, completely. And initially it was their father had actually come to England, and it was and the boys and the sort of the mother and the rest of the family were all back home in Tonga, and it was my grandfather was like, no, you've all got to be there, and moved them over. And do you know what I did actually see, which is quite upsetting, but their dad, Fio, or however we say it, apparently wanted them to play for Wales.
That would have been naughty.
That would have been bad, but he says now that when he sees his boys in the England kit singing the anthem, he does get very emotional, as I imagine any father would. Yeah. But he's, he considers himself sort of English, an English rugby fan now, and absolutely no regrets for his sons, both representing England, which is what they both wanted to do.
And with England, of course, his sons will get to lift the Webb Ellis Trophy, which, of course, they would never have been able to do with Wales.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? That's the key. In 2019, when they're picking up that trophy, I think the whole family are going to be happy, and any sort of lingering doubts or suggestions of them not playing for England will be long gone.
Yeah, the decision will be vindicated.
Yeah, I wonder if so I wonder, had Billy sort of came over here, obviously played his rugby, sort of Wasps, Saracens, all that, if he'd played for Tonga, I just, it would have, this is nothing against Tonga, but would he be the player he is now? I think the England has helped drive him forward as well, especially now when you sort of see under, the likes of Eddie Jones and things.
Yeah, and I guess the reality is if he was kind of making himself available to Tonga, New Zealand would have found a way to move them over there. It seems to be the way they do things now, isn't it?
Yeah, it does seem to sort of have that route, doesn't it? Because, I mean, both of them would be in the All Black squad without a doubt. I think, they've just become such like huge impact powerhouses, and it's interesting because they've both shed a lot of weight. Because I think they both put their hands up and say, they enjoy their food, enjoy their takeaways. When they go over to their parents' house, they won't let their mum cook anymore, just because they like her food too much. They just end up, and they're like, if they go over there, apparently they just all they do is eat her food. Apparently she's a hell of a chef, so they sort of tell her she's not allowed to cook anymore.
Fair enough. Trying to lose some poundage, they need to eat healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And Billy now, I saw an interview with him via Rugby World, and he still loves his chocolate, his takeaway, but he now restricts himself. He now understands more sort of being professionalism, having a good diet, and I think he allows. I think was it after a match he allows himself a burger. I think the word was a burger or two, so I suspect there'll be
McDonald's drive-through.
It's going to be backed up, to be frank, because I think they'll.
And of course, you get your Big Mac, but you've always got to have the cheeseburger on the side.
Yeah. You need to warm up before the Big Mac,
and you need a few nuggets.
Yeah,
but a Diet Coke.
yeah, you're going to be healthy. You're professional athletes, right? So you've got to be healthy.
And an apple pie gets 5 a day.
No, just the hottest thing known to mankind. But they do it. And I do know what? It's because of Jono. I remember reading about Jono once. Jono apparently used to like a bucket of KFC chicken after an international match. I can just see Jono sitting there in the change room, just eating the chicken, just growling at anyone who comes near him. But yeah, Billy's. I think he's sort of no different. Sort of, says he enjoys the food, but actually, you can see now when you watch him play, he is such a more athletic player than perhaps he was before. Losing that weight. Look, the guy's still nearly 20 stone.
But he doesn't. He doesn't look like a prop anymore.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't. He looks like sort of just the sort of beast that he is. And when you're carrying 20 stone and you shed a lot and you're looking athletic, you're doing something right. So yeah, I mean that's obviously Billy's sort of big news at the moment, and that was the thing. It was really interesting reading about their family. Actually, they seem like a really sort of nice, respectful family as a whole. There's lots of sort of interviews with their mother, their father, and it's clearly still a very close family. In St Albans, Mako and Billy live together. I don't think they do anymore, but it's sort of very close family. They always have been, and like you say, like I said earlier, the reason sort of Billy's at Saracens is because the family didn't want them playing against each other, which from a rugby perspective, I found a bit odd. Like I get it if you're like boxer or something, maybe like the Klitschko's, they never want to fight each other. I mean, I guess they're both pretty impactful players, but there's quite a few brothers who take the pitch against each other, aren't there? But it doesn't seem to work for their family. Yeah, so I think that's all things Billy from that perspective.
Awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I'm gonna sort of sign off now. Obviously, there's sort of a bit to follow, which guys, obviously, please stay listening to. From my perspective, just want to say thanks so much for listening. Please do continue to support us. We're very sort of humbled by sort of continual support and positive feedback. It means a lot to us. So thanks very much, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, cheers, guys. As Dan says, and to reiterate, yeah, it's been a really interesting journey so far. We're 8 weeks down. We've got I think it's about 160 of you now that regularly tune in, which is amazing, and that seems to be growing all the time. And yeah, right now the most important thing and the most valuable thing that anyone can do for us is to pop onto iTunes and drop us a review. It just gets us noticed, and the ultimate goal is to be part of their new and noteworthy section. And that only happens with your help. So anything you can do would be great. Of course, get us on social media @RugbyPod, or check out the website www.englandrugbypod.com. So that is also all from me. But of course, as Dan mentions, a little bit more to come because I've interviewed the pod doc. Dr. James Young is going to be with us in just a moment to talk about specifically, we're talking to him because of the Billy injury. So that's kind of the main purpose of the interview. Hope you enjoy. Right, guys, here it is. We are extremely fortunate to have our very own pod doctor, Dr. James Young, or Mr. Young. We'll come on to that. He is a consultant orthopaedic sports surgeon based down in Kent. And though he specialises in knees, I am reliably informed that he will be able to fill us in on a number of injuries that our England boys are likely to face en route to the 2019 Rugby World Cup. He joins us today for his first cameo in light of the recent news regarding Billy Vunipola's withdrawal from the Lions tour. So we're incredibly grateful to have him on board. Dr. Young, Mr. Young, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Please put me out of my misery regarding your title.
Well, thanks, Andy. It's certainly great to be on the show, or should I say the podcast. It's Mr. actually for surgeons, and this goes back to the sort of Middle Ages when I'm actually just having to look this up, so don't put that bit in.
Okay.
I thought it was because they were butchers, but actually it's not. So I was going to tell you the wrong thing and say it was all because they were butchers, but actually I've just looked at it. Why are they called Mr.? Because from the Middle Ages, physicians had to embark on formal university training to gain possession of their degree in medicine before they could enter practice. And that doesn't make any sense, actually.
I like butchers. Let's go with butchers. That sounds good. We can caveat it with this is not an official answer to the Doctor versus Mr. quandary, but it's the one that the pod doc is going with. So There you have it. But yeah, no, great to have you with us. It's quite cool. This is the only podcast we're aware of that has its very own doctor.
Well, I'm absolutely honoured, and this will be good fun.
Good. Well, let's crack straight on then, because obviously we're here for a particular reason. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about you and how you've got to where you are and how that relates to rugby, because you've actually covered games for 2 Australian rugby franchises as the on-pitch doctor, I believe, the Brisbane Broncos, who are rugby league, and the Queensland Reds. Is that right?
That is correct, yeah. We've just come back from Australia. We were out there for just over 2 years doing fellowship training out there. So that's where you finished your training and you're about to be a consultant and you think, actually, I'm going to go and get better at certain areas of orthopedics. And so we went out to Australia, and I was very lucky to work alongside and for a man called Peter Myers. And he does as you said, the Queensland Reds. He covers their rugby matches. He's also the knee surgeon to the Australian Wallabies, as well as the other teams like the Brisbane Heat, who you won't have heard of. But that's the professional netball side in Brisbane. And we used to go to match day games, as you said, at the Queensland Reds, and then also the Brisbane Broncos. So yeah, it was great to be pitch side and going onto the pitch when needed.
Amazing. So if we do face Australia in any big games between now and the World Cup, you could potentially find out if there's any target areas for us to go after on the Australian side.
Well, yeah, that's probably true. Probably not something I should own up to, but I was lucky enough to have some of the Wallabies in clinic and to operate on some as well. So it was a great overall experience. Rubbing shoulders with these elite athletes and getting them back on the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, what does it actually entail? Why would a professional sports team need to employ the services of a match day surgeon?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, you need a match day doctor. You do need a medical support, and you need certainly qualified medics who know how to treat serious injuries such as neck and spinal injuries, as well as head injuries, obviously. But whether or not you need particularly a knee surgeon to be on the bench, I don't think is really necessary. But it was certainly great to be back involved with professional sportsmen, and as I say, getting down there match day, right on pitch side, smelling the grass, and for someone that's been a rugby fan for now on 35 years, it was brilliant to be so close and involved.
Yeah, I can imagine. Absolutely. It's sort of getting the perfect seat to watch the game, and I guess hoping you don't have to do too much in the back room. You can just concentrate on enjoying the rugby.
That's it.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, the big news right now is of course Billy Vunipola's injury. His shoulder injury. That's all we seem to have been able to find out. It's probably all you know, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I would say straight away, I do not know exactly what Billy's done to his shoulder. And if I did know, I probably wouldn't tell you, to be honest. But unless it had been made public, which I don't think it has.
No.
And of course, we all saw the Premiership semi-final, Exeter Saracens, and Billy having to take off his shirt to receive treatment on that shoulder. There's a huge amount of strapping on that shoulder. So you've got to suspect he's got an instability issue. Instability being that the muscles and the soft tissues around his shoulder joint are not doing their job of holding it in the right place. So that's what I suspect he's done. But as I say, I don't know for sure.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me as quite interesting is it's obviously quite a serious injury. To pull out of a Lions tour once every 4 years, and for a lot of players, I suspect not him, but for a lot of players, a once in a lifetime opportunity. So to pull out of a tour like that, it's got to be something quite serious. And already they're saying that he's expected to be back for the beginning of the season, which is the beginning of September. It's only 4 months away. That seems like a pretty quick turnaround for major shoulder surgery. I certainly can't imagine myself recovering in only 4 months. I think I'd probably take 4 years.
No, that's right. And you probably would take 4 years, but I think most people shoulders. I mean, the first thing to say is that an elite athlete, as Billy is, getting back to playing that sort of level of sport, and a contact sport, shoulder surgery is going to be recommended, because obviously he needs to be able to perform at the highest level, and he's not going to have confidence in those hits and those ball carries with a shoulder that feels like it's coming out of joint. So let's assume that he does have an instability issue, and that's why he's having surgery. The concern for me there is that if it was only 4 months out, this is just, again, I don't know, I don't have any information. But
sure, we're basing this on the guesswork that we've made into
on the guesswork and on the media.
Yeah.
If he really is only going to be out 4 months, then surely you're going to play you're going to do the Lions tour, and you're going to have 4 months out in the season. I would think. I mean, look, he played in the semi-final, and we don't know how much worse during that game. But my suspicion is, and if you look at the data from the NFL, and there was a very good paper done in 2014 on NFL players, National Football League in the States, American football, getting back to playing after shoulder surgery for instability. None of them got back the same season.
Really?
So they all took at least 9 months. 8 to 9 months. I know it's a shorter season. NFL is a much shorter season, but I think the average return was around 9 months. So none of them played that same season. So you might find that Billy actually thinks he's going to be out nearer 8-9 months, and therefore he's thinking, hold on, if I go on this tour, come back, and in August I decide to have surgery, that's the whole of next season done.
Yeah. And
then we're into World Cup year.
Absolutely. That's interesting. So it may well be the media that are touting this theory that he's back at the beginning of the season. And
I don't know.
He's keeping quiet and just...
Yeah. I mean, maybe he has a lesser injury. Yeah. And so maybe, and if he's got a lesser injury, then great. But then surely you go on the tour.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think that Saracens are probably weighing in a little bit on this decision. They must be thinking that, we're the guys that pay your salary. We don't want you going on a sort of a jolly and risking damage that's going to cost us even more time with you out. He's too important, isn't he? As a rugby player, the guy is essential in whatever team he's in, whether that be the Lions, Saracens, or England. And obviously, as the England Rugby pod, our focus is on making sure that he's fit and healthy to do what he has to do to help the boys raise the trophy in 2019. So, credit to him for doing what he's doing. Hopefully, as you say, it's something less serious. But if it's not, then I guess he's making the right decision to get it fixed as soon as possible, rather than risking making it worse than it already is. And I guess that's the thought process.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right.
And in terms of the recovery itself, I mean, are there things that he will be doing differently to what you or I might be doing in the same situation? I mean, obviously these guys, they're not being treated on the NHS. This is all private. Are there therefore different facilities? Are there are there different types of recovery procedures?
No, the surgeon probably will be. I don't know who his surgeon's going to be, but he may well be someone that's gone full-time private. I don't know. The facilities will be very shiny and clean and new, I'm sure, but the actual procedure itself will be a fairly standard operation, whether you get injured, playing on a Sunday down the park with the boys, or whether Saturday, Sunday, rugby, football, whatever it is, or whether you're an elite athlete. The actual operation, I'm sure, will be very similar. The kit that's used will be very similar. So there isn't a massive difference between NHS and private surgery in terms of the bits that are used, because it all has to be evidence-based to be safe and to be good practice.
Sure. And what about on the recovery front? Because I know that we've talked before about some of the players that we've covered, going for hyperbaric oxygen therapy and things like this, which is something that I've never come across from a personal recovery point of view. It's not something that's ever been offered to me when I've had a sore knee or whatever it might be. Is it something that's available out? Is it out there for everyone? Is it part of is it something on the NHS, or is that something that's very much a bit more?
It's certainly not on the NHS. It is something that they use the elite athletes to try and speed up recovery. But, at the end of the day, you've still got to allow, you can stabilise someone's shoulder or stabilise someone's knee, and you've got to allow those tissues to heal. You might speed up that healing a little bit with things like hyperbaric therapy, but ultimately the body has to heal itself. And so that first 6 weeks after a shoulder stabilisation, for example, or a knee stabilisation, is pretty slow for everyone. no matter what level of sport you're at, because you've got to let the body do its own bit of healing first.
Sure.
But it's the next phase. It's the phase 2 where you're getting your range of movement back. You're starting to do some light, active muscle strengthening, and then that usually lasts up to sort of 4 or 5 months. And then phase 3 takes you up to anywhere between 9 months and 12 months. And it's phase 3 where you do a lot of the strength work. So phases 2 and 3 really are where the elite athletes will be. They've got much better facilities. Remember, this is their job. They don't get to work at 8 in the morning and then come home at 6 o'clock and then do their rehab and their elastic bands to get their strengthening back up. These guys can spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day doing the rehab, doing the exercises, doing the strengthening. So they will get back quicker.
Of course, yeah. That's a good point, because it is, of course, as you say, it's their job, and I guess when you're injured as an elite athlete, your job is to recover, whereas for the rest of us, your job remains the same regardless, and you've got to find a way to recover around it.
And their motivation is such that these guys are the greyhounds. They are. This is what they've done forever. Just getting back on that pitch is their ultimate motivation. So they don't need to be cajoled, as some of us might, Dan, perhaps, when we get injured.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting when you say it, it seems obvious, but it's not necessarily something you think about when you read it in the media, and you read about a player who's injured, he's pulled out, or he's not playing that day, and he's going to be better in 6, 8, 12 weeks time, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it might be. You don't really think about the work that goes into getting back, and I suppose any increase in the speed of recovery is down to an increase in the volume of recovery, I suppose, is one way of looking at it.
He'll have a massive team around them. The setup in these professional teams now is just absolutely incredible. The number of physios, trainers, you've got your strength guy, you've got your cardio guy, or girl, you've got your dietitian. They've got their own cooks. All of these things added together. I mean, there's a night and day really between what we would be receiving with our rehab and what these guys are getting.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's probably a really good place to stop. We don't want to go into too much about anyone else. We're here today specifically to talk about Billy, and I think that's definitely been quite informative, and it's been good to introduce you to the pod. As I say, we'll have you on again, and it's one of those where we don't really want to have you on too often, because it means there's been a lot of injuries. But since the injuries are almost a guarantee, I think already as of the game yesterday, there's 2 more injuries to some of the young lads. Underhill, I think, is injured. He's no longer going on the Argentina tour. And I think Lazowski is also injured and no longer going on the Argentina tour. So I'm sure there will be more to talk about soon. But this has been a great way to round off our episode on Billy Vunipola. So thanks again for joining us. And of course, thanks to everyone for listening.
Absolute pleasure. All the best.
Cheers. Take care. Thanks, guys.